It's football and other F words where nothing matters. This team is a dark abyss of depression. It is just dysfunction after dysfunction. Really, we should of course, we're at the Cumulus Media Studios. It's myself, Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. Listen to Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, Stoney Keeley's back from drone shooting or drone flying from New Jersey.
I ain't telling y'all what I was doing.
There you go.
None of y'all.
Yeah, at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. But I was saying right before we got, we should have gone in there and told Ramon and Ron Slay, because they're finishing up 3HL.
Oh yeah,
we should have had them sit on the casting couch.
Man, I don't.
Well, we'll have plenty of opportunities this summer.
We should have asked Mr. Slay where the Blantons is.
Yeah, we definitely needed Blantons. Of course, I just took Advil because this fucking team is giving me a headache this week.
You can mix stuff. There ain't rules against it.
Yeah, I look at this team, and where do we begin?
Well, first of all, my range of emotions have gone from a very tense Sunday night, because you and I were messaging back and forth. There were rumblings going on, and it was very, very stressful. And I went to bed that night, and I thought, no news is probably good news for Rand Carthon.
Joke's on you.
Joke's on me. After that news broke, I've gone the full range of, like, I don't want to follow this team anymore. I don't want to write about this team anymore. I don't want to cover it. To actually, no, I think I want to write a book about the entire last decade of the Titans organization. So it's just been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster of emotion.
You could write 2 seasons worth of Days of Our Lives based off the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah,
just the last year.
What if that's what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a script together. I'm going to write a movie, and I'm not going to say it's about the Titans, but I'm just going to see if people pick up on it.
Okay.
They probably will, because my name's attached to it.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, you have 2 books out.
Yeah.
You have a poetry book and a film review book.
Yeah, and
I bought Mom the new poetry book because of the bigger writing.
I fixed the font. The font in the first edition was atrocious.
It was the page, for those that are just imagine a normal blank piece of paper, and then right in the smack dab is like 2 font.
Yeah, it was
poems.
You needed a magnifying glass to read it. So I corrected that, but
I also got her the movie book.
Oh, well, thank you for that. That was a fun project. Brandon, Vic, and I put a lot of hard work into that. I've got volume 2 of the poetry coming out here pretty soon too. So
get this volume going.
Just trying to, there's a poem in there about this week.
Now
I need to write it.
It's a big one. Okay, so this team is. Would you think that dysfunctional is the correct term? I mean, I think erratic is probably the best description of ownership.
Yeah.
But I feel like this whole my big thing is how they packaged the firing of Rand Carthon and the messaging that's been coming out with it. Not necessarily the firing of Rand Carthon. Because here's the thing. You could make the case based on free agency kind of failing because of it may have been because of injuries, but you're talking about a 3-14 football team, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, for the sake
the general
of this,
fans,
yeah,
the general fans, not us. I know there's
Mm-hmm.
nuance and context to all that, but as far as us, like as far as general fans,
yeah,
most of them wanted everybody out anyway.
I would say, according to my mentions, yes. Most people wanted the house clean.
I think the issue is how they've decided to package that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what you're essentially getting is more of the same, right? Like, if you're coming out and you're saying, well, the results, this was a 3-14 football team, we're going to hold Rand Carthon responsible for it because the team was bad. Well, Rand Carthon wasn't the only one that contributed to the team being bad. Like, Chad Brinker was right there with him in the office. From the messaging we got last offseason, it was lockstep, right? Everybody holding hands, skipping through the field, picking flowers, that kind of deal. Also, Brian Callahan, the head coach, the product on the field, he's responsible in part for the outcome as well. So what you're saying is essentially a year after we're all collaborating, we've all got equal say in this, no, actually it was just all Rand and it was his fault, and now he's gone. And the problem, I think, for Titans fans is that if you want to change course, if you want to move in a different direction, how are you really moving in a different direction if two of the three people that were at the top of this brain trust in your organization, your football operations, if two of those three people are back, it kind of feels like it's going to be more of the same. So what really gives? Like what's really going on here? And I think that's the point of confusion. And I do think there are a lot of people out there that just genuinely felt like Rand wasn't the problem here. And I kind of reject the premise that what was in the statement. I don't want to mince words or get anything wrong, but the statement was something along the lines of, the state of our roster over the last 2 years, and we've won 9 games, we're 9-25. The roster did not get better under Rand. I reject that premise because you and I sat in this studio a month ago and went through pretty much move by move and said, okay, this was a pretty good cycle this past season. And so by firing Rand, if you're admitting that Rand was in charge all along, well, then I don't think Rand did a really bad job. And it's also unfair to the man to basically hold the final 3 years of John Robinson's drafting and the shit show that the franchise became on Rand Carthon to get that turned around in one offseason that was supposedly split with Mike Vrabel, and then another one that was split with Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan. And
Is
so
Jackson in there?
I don't know. I can't see anything. There's a door open. Oh, I see the hat.
Hey, I need
I
need a new battery pack. This thing died.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
But go ahead. Sorry.
So I think my issue too is, and we'll get into the nuance of this because I think there's a lot of tentacles here, but I do think that I do think the issue here is with the messaging. It's like,
yeah, that's the biggest issue.
It doesn't make sense to say what you're saying now based off of what you said last year. And that's where I think the dysfunction and the division stems from. It's crazy. It's like there's a spectrum of Chad Brinker is a snake oil salesman to nobody knows what Rand Carthon was doing in the building all day. And there's a lot of like he said, she said kind of stuff floating through the media this week that we don't have to get into. I'm not a source guy, even though people keep DMing me stuff and calling me with stuff. I'm just a film guy that makes a dick joke every once in a while. But
or the Le Creuset joke.
The Le Creuset, yeah. But for real, Le Creuset is
it's a great joke.
Phenomenal product, by the way. No free advertising, of course. But I there's a lot of he said, she said stuff, but I'm just talking about like the stuff that we know from press releases, media availability, quotes, and their actions. The actions don't, to me, really support what you're saying.
They don't know how to do damage control.
No. Well, we've talked about issue. PR.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the main issues here is that they don't have any fucking clue how to do damage control.
Yeah.
Because they went overboard, in my opinion. I mean, for all the talk that Rand Carthon is this great relationship guy.
Yeah.
And so that was the big thing, right? Relationship Rand, great relationship, all this stuff. And you hear players like they wouldn't have gotten Calvin Ridley if it wasn't for Rand Carthon's relationship with them.
Right.
DeAndre Hopkins even said, well, no, I'm here because of Rand Carthon, not Mike Vrabel. I mean, he didn't say not Mike Vrabel, but he specifically pointed to Rand Carthon as the reason that he's here. And then stuff comes out today, well, everybody's just really happy that he's gone. And I think TD said it best. I was listening to him today, and he said that if you were getting paid by an employer, and let's say that Jackson is let go.
Tough
Sorry,
scene.
Jackson, tough scene.
Well,
Tough deal.
Yeah, Jackson is like producer Jackson's gone.
I told him not to wear that hat with the T
am
on
not
it.
going to be raising Cain. Sorry, Jackson. I'm not going to be raising Cain out in public, talking bad about the employer. I'm just be say, hey, it's unfortunate. Glad he's gone, and move on.
Yeah.
And it's no different. Well, I don't understand why people think the NFL is different, because it's actually more like Succession than probably actual Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah. I don't know. I've worked at a couple of places, the day jobs that have kind of reminded me of what's going on in here.
But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, so now here's the thing. Everything they said last year doesn't matter anymore. But now we're supposed to believe everything this year.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. This is all petty bullshit. And my big thing, Stoney, isn't against the media or the reporters reporting it. Okay? Because, I mean, they're getting information. I'm sure most have verified the information they've been given. I have beef with the sources themselves because I'm like, you guys are fucking cowards. You guys aren't men. You guys aren't adults. You guys are babies.
Yeah.
I know of some sources of some media members and that have been out on rant since day one because they were Mike Vrabel or J-Rob holdovers.
Yeah.
Day one. So there's nothing. These guys have been out for Rand's job since he got the job.
Or they just didn't like him. Like, if the things that are being reported, like, if those are true in and of themselves, that's not really the problem. It's the fact that those things that Rand supposedly did rubbed people within the organization the wrong way.
And who gives a fuck? Grow up.
Well,
if you're no, not you.
I'm talking. What did I do?
I'm talking about those people. Like, it rubbed several people the wrong way. Who the fuck cares? If someone's what is Rand Carthon doing the other times he's away? Like, and from what I've heard from people that are actually on the plane, is that nobody's really grinding tape, like they say.
Yeah.
I've heard maybe one or two coaches are. Because they're mostly tired or they're exhausted and stuff like that. I've been on a team plane before. I myself have been on the plane after CJ2K got 2,000 yards up in Seattle.
What was your role with the team at that time?
It was fun-loving uncle.
I like that.
But and it's the worst being in a press box, by the way, especially if we didn't know at the time when we went up there. We went up there as fans. We got a little favor on the side, and we went up there and like you can't cheer. And CJ2K broke 2,000 yards and I couldn't fucking cheer. I was there for it. Just had to sit there and take it in the face. And I look at it and I go, and on the ride back, nobody was grinding tape. Like this idea, that's, what those guys who were saying that, what they were doing?
What?
Not grinding tape because they were too busy watching Rand Carthon sleep.
Yeah.
Like fucking creepers.
Well, like I said, I don't want to get into all the he said, she said stuff, but like there's more stuff floating around out there. And that I will say, like, from a logic standpoint, like, okay, if your general premise is he was just bad at his job, then okay, like you fire him. If that's what you believe, stand by it. No issue with that. But it is like all the petty stuff that's being like leaked out and circulating. And I've heard some stuff that I haven't seen said public that I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, why? It's almost, the thing that frustrates me the most is that it's almost just like, this isn't about performance anymore. We're trying to smear the guy because we don't like him or we took issue with him. And I don't know, man. I'm not in the building every day. That might surprise some people watching, but I'm not in the building all day, so I don't see it. Like I said, all you have is this spectrum of Chad Brinker's playing Game of Thrones to Rand doesn't do anything, and there's a ton of stories in between. And I don't know, man. Like,
nobody can get to get constant promotions without being good at football and without sleeping and thinking about football all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we were both pro Carthon before the Mike Vrabel
based
firing.
on his resume, based on what the people in San Francisco, the Rams, other people that have dealt with him. NFL execs voted him as, I'll have to go back and look for it, but as one of the best up-and-coming GM candidates around.
Yeah. So what happened to that guy?
It sounds like that guy just got brought over to be a lapdog.
Mm.
I mean, think of what their statement said. They're stupid. Like, guys, you guys cannot let that go to print. I don't know who's in charge of letting it go to print. Like, that's when you put a pause and say, "Hey, Jim, let's put a pencil back up in that visor. We need to hash this messaging out a little bit further."
Yeah.
Because they said that they hired him under the circumstances and job description that he would be Vrabel's lackey. Is pretty much what they said.
Well, and he said in the introductory press conference, like, it's my job to get the players that Mike wants.
Right.
Something like that.
Which is the job of the general manager typically, to get the players.
Fair enough.
You know what I'm saying? And they said that that's what they hired him for.
Yeah.
The Mike Vrabel didn't even fucking want him.
Mm-hmm.
So how ass backwards is that? Okay, that's fine if that's what you're hiring for this GM, which lets you know that is true. Because guess what? Adam Peters didn't want to come be that guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
He's
Adam
doing pretty
Peters
good now too.
Yeah, Adam Peters is a GM elsewhere because he wanted to have final say. He wanted to devise a strategy. He didn't want to come in and be someone's lackey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, Rand Carthon is in a different situation because he's not as high ranked as Adam Peters over there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, it's a black man. It is hard for a black man to become general manager.
Yeah.
As unfair as it is 10 times harder. So sometimes you have to take opportunities when presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he took the opportunity because, hey, guess what? I am a guy that thrives on relationships. I can make it work.
Yeah. I can navigate this.
And you look at it, and he goes, this is from Burke Nihill, who shouldn't be talking about football whatsoever. He's not a football guy. Stick to the stadium. Let's go that route. Rand was hired for a general manager position that was very specific to the circumstances at the time. And the forecasting was the general manager would be able to partner very closely with the head coach, the existing head coach. Okay. So you hired Rand Carthon for whatever reason, probably because he was the only person willing to take the job besides Ryan Cowden, who you didn't want, because that would be Vrabel consolidating too much power.
Mm-hmm.
And so you paired him with the guy that didn't even want him. Fast forward, you decided to fire the other guy. And while Rand Carthon was on a 2-year contract, so he would have been heading into his second year, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't have to give him an extension. You decided to give him an extension, even though that supposedly he's lazy, he naps all the time, and he doesn't do his job.
Leaves pro days early.
Well, he left the right pro day early, as Will Levis.
Which Paul even noted in his article that's not all that uncommn.
Yeah. Which if it's not all that uncommon, why even fucking write it? I don't you know what I'm saying? Like, why does it fucking matter? Because it rubbed a couple scouts the wrong way. Oh, big whoop. Grow up, people. And as the circumstances exist today, the general manager position is different. Okay, let's first stop there. So you shifted the goalposts of what the general manager position is. Didn't know whether or not if Rand Carthon was the guy that could fit this new job description, which is really the same as the old job description. It wasn't anything really different. And you still decided to give him an extension. You didn't have to give him the extension.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then they go on this press tour all last year, right? All last year.
Yeah.
Where they're talking about the job, or they're talking about being in line, which is all around the job description they're describing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's career as a scout. Check. That's where he came from. Come from a top flight winning organization. Check. He's done it. Like, I mean, come on. And so they talk about it's, draft and develop, in his...
What a revolutionary concept.
Yeah, which is so fucking stupid. What is our vision, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously the vision and the job responsibilities didn't align for Rand Carthon for whatever reason. So here's the vision. We're going to be a draft and develop organization What does that mean? Well, I don't think we really need to explain it to us what draft and develop is. I think we could fucking figure it out. And also because you already said it once, but it means we're going to build the core of our roster through the draft. We're going to be selective in free agency. And really, people get really hung up on selective and free agency. We're going to dunk on that later. Number 2, it means we're going to emphasize player development, particularly our young players. Oh, duh. And number 3, once those players develop, we're going to look to retaining our core performers, our very best. Now, listen, maybe, let's say this. John Robinson didn't do that, so maybe he didn't know what number 3 meant, draft and develop. Maybe he thought he meant you're supposed to develop for other teams. So maybe it isn't as common as we think.
Touche.
He goes, I grew up in this system. It's what I know. It's what I believe in, blah, blah, blah. A lot of chit, chat, and chatter. Just so you guys know, draft and develop. So let's go back to what he said in 2024, February 2nd, 2024, not even a year, less than a year. I know Ran and I, we've had a lot of conversations just around philosophically how to build a football team, and we're just so aligned, he and I. So it's not about him not understanding the vision or agreeing with the vision. Okay, so, and this is not a new vision, because here's what it says. It's, he goes down here and he says, you really want to build your team through the draft. I mean, that's Ran and I. That's our background. That's where we come from.
Yeah.
Philosophically, we're built through the draft, develop young players, and retain our core performers. I mean, that is as simple as I can make it. So he's just a fucking jukebox is repeating the same song over and over. He's just changing the band of who's playing.
Which goes back to my point is that they're telling us we want to do this as if we weren't doing that before. And if it's about the results, why are the other 2 people that contributed to those results still fired? Like it just kind of reeks to me. I'm open to the idea that they believe in the building Rand just didn't do a good job. And
that's fine. And that's where it just needs to end.
It just needs to end. Exactly. Yeah. But from what it sounds like, from what we're hearing, I don't know, man. To me, it just sounds like somebody didn't like Rand. And
here's what it sounds like to me.
And
I agree with that.
Grind.
I feel like there's a couple axes to grind. I feel like there's some stuff that comes out that is just like, well, I'm company man now, and I got my loyalties to Chad. I kneel at the feet of Chad Brinker. I can't rock the boat.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that they're getting all this message out early before Rand Carthon has even spoke to anybody.
Yeah.
So whatever he's going to say is going to likely contradict most of what they say, and everybody's going to call Rand Carthon the liar.
Yeah.
Because that's how this all works.
Man.
That's how this, because you do not, it is so unnecessary. Some of the phrasing and wording they have used, it is so unnecessary from a optics PR standpoint, because all you got to do is say, hey, we fired our GM. Everybody been like, okay, that makes sense. Except for they still would have been mad about Chad Brinker, but what you've done is just make Chad Brinker come off worse.
Yeah.
Even if it's not really his fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
He could be an unwitting accomplice to someone higher up than him, whether it's owner, CEO, doesn't matter. He may just be along for a ride or whatever. I don't feel that's the case.
Yeah.
But that's possible.
I also think there is a timeline, just to be open, where if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, well, I thought this last cycle was good, Brinker had a hand in that. If we do get more of the same, I keep saying, like, despite the messaging coming out, it feels like we are going to have a little bit of continuity here. Well, I mean, maybe it's okay. Maybe, like, the end results will be fine, but I think what you have to reconcile with as a Titans fan is, like, how do you feel about the way they've done business about all of this? And that's ultimately the hardest pill for me to swallow this week.
So Ed Dodds, because this kind of gets me to this, like, building the core, right?
Real quick, if I may. I like to call him Brink Lesnar because he kind of looks like Brock Lesnar.
He does. Milt Anderson, possible GM candidate, hasn't been announced or requested or anything, but he looks like, I guess you'd say Brink Lesnar's older brother.
Brink Lesnar Sr.
Yeah. But here's my thing. So you talk about building the core of your roster, right? Well, you just fucking decimated the core of your roster through free agency, and you built a new core.
Yeah, because it wasn't just like replacing guys that moved on, but like you're talking about completely different schemes on offense and defense.
55% roster turnover.
Yeah, man.
So he didn't even get a chance to really build a core, and some of the pieces that are going to be considered your core later that Chad Brinker will take credit for if this thing all works out will come at Rand's supposedly Rand's final say.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, obviously they are saying that Rand is responsible for everything. So if all these players end up being good, Brinker gets to be like, Snead comes back as an all-pro. Brinker's going to be like, he gets to reap the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
While Rand Carthon, who was told that he's a lazy dummy, he gets put off to the side.
Yeah.
And he got thrown out. Because you can't build your core without stability, and he wasn't even allowed to build his core. He started to build a core. If you really believe, if you're one of those people that believes that every move is only Rand Carthon, which I don't, but that's how they word it.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that they weren't going to spend money in free agency and that they being selective, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what Chad Brinker said back in February. We're trying to add impact players, and when it comes to free agency, you're going to have to pay a premium for that. Okay, so you're adding impact players. You're going to have to pay a premium for that. You're in charge of the salary cap. You facilitated the Snead trade with Mike Berganzi. You were involved in the Ridley trade because Rand Carthon said in the press conference it was a team effort and said you by name. So if you're in charge of the salary cap and then also you technically rank above Rand Carthon, you, Brian Callahan, and and Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, all three of them guys collaborated, came to a consensus, because that's what Brian Callahan said, came to a consensus, and they went through the consensus. You're complicit. And listen, you could be complicit multiple ways, because what if he just sat there and lied about agreeing with all the moves?
Yeah.
And lied and really disagreed, but he knew he wouldn't get the blame if he disagreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if he agreed just out of spite? That's possible. Okay. What if he disagreed?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Tell us what moves you disagreed with. But you can't say the Snead trade because you fucking went all for it.
Yeah, your fingerprints are on it.
Yeah, fingerprints are all over it. So, my thing is, fire everyone. This half-assed accountability has got to stop. And really, we've been sitting here now. So he got fired on Tuesday. Requests started on Wednesday. It's Thursday. We haven't heard of anybody accept an interview request. We haven't heard of an interview scheduled as of this recording.
Yeah, and it's Thursday night.
And we haven't seen any requests sent out to Packers people yet. This is all... And then don't forget, Jonathan Jones is saying that because of how this GM title is set up and the responsibilities and job description along with it, the NFL's investigating them again.
It's a mess. To quote, oh man, I've forgotten his name, Zach Galifianakis in the campaign. It's a mess.
It is. I look at it. And I'm just like, I understand. I'm not advocating that Rand should have kept his job based off anything other than the other two people that also led this team. Because, Brinker's been here for 3 years. This is his third year. He was here for the Mike Vrabel mess. And word is that Mike Vrabel's kind of kicking around wondering if if Chad Brinker's the reason that Mike Vrabel got kicked out.
Ooh, that's spicy.
Because I've heard that that Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon have chatted. And Mike Vrabel is like, glad you're out of that mess.
That's interesting.
So, because remember, all that stuff that went down, they kept saying, even in that Diana Rossini, Joe Rex wrote article, that while he didn't want Rand Carthon, they had a good working relationship and they respected each other. So there's only really two constants, well, I guess three constants, throughout this whole mess. Amy Adams Strunk, CEO Burke Nihill, and Chad Brinker.
Yeah. I think it is the dysfunction of it all.
It looks like it may have just came out that they're good to go.
When we
I'll
got,
double check that.
Eddie doing work for us in the chat. Shout out, Eddie.
Yeah,
How about
read
that?
the tweet.
Jonathan Jones tweeted, sources, the NFL has reviewed the description of the Titans general manager position, and the two sides have agreed that the vacant position will be the primary football executive post. Non-GMs cannot be blocked by their current teams from accepting interview requests.
Okay, so read that a little bit slower. Not like super slow, but just slower.
The NFL
You said
has
Jonathan
reviewed
Jones?
the description of the Titans general manager position, and the two sides have agreed that the vacant position will be the primary football executive post. Non-GMs cannot be blocked by their current teams from accepting interview requests.
So what does that mean, you think?
They're good to go.
Well, no, I'm talking about the vacant position will be the primary football executive post. Because that's not what they've said.
Yeah.
And everything they've released.
And again, we're like, what's the truth right now? What are we I don't know, like the information is just all over the place.
Well, it's just like in that opening article where they just trash, Rand Carthon and say that, he's not they allude that he's not a football guy or anything like that.
Yeah.
So Chad Brinker says, I think the general manager position is unique to their respective organizations. This particular job, what we'll be looking for is someone who has spent their career as a scout, top flight, top level evaluator, who has spent the majority of their career projecting college players to the National Football League. They've had a major hand in setting the draft board, is in preferably a consistent winning organization. You can see their fingerprints all over the roster. And he also goes on, we're looking for a general manager. His role is to he goes, they're going to focus on the roster and the coaching staff, and I'll continue in my role. I will continue in my role with handling all the other areas that surround the center of our program, scouting and coaches. So I will support that person. Okay, I will support that person. The next paragraph down, Burke Nihill says, essentially, right here, Chad is the leader of the football program, so Chad will be the final authority on all football matters, including the roster.
What a mess. What a mess. Oh, man. Are they not talking to each other?
They're supposedly in the same room because this is what it says. And so while the general manager position will have a primary responsibility in all the things Chad is describing, so that to me sounds like Chad's in the same room as Burke Nihill.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless they wrote it down or he heard the quote or something. Like
man.
it's a crap show. And again, I'm not advocating for Rand Carthon to keep his job. I'm advocating for everybody to lose their job. If you're going to blame one person, you should blame all three. Because Brian Callahan even said, basically, they're a tripod.
Yeah. So, man, I don't know. I there's just so much. We're like competing against one another right here. It's just like, this doesn't make sense with that. That doesn't make sense with this. I just want, is it so much to ask for a little clarity?
What's
here?
funny about all this is, Vrabel, one of his demands to stay around, if you remember, was the football czar position, a president of football operations, someone that would be above both of them. They fire Vrabel and they make a football czar position.
Yeah, it's inconsistent.
It's so inconsistent.
So what if, okay, so let me put this narrative out there for you. Your thoughts on the idea that I've heard this week, that this is sort of Amy Adams Strunk just kind of understanding she's going to take some lumps for this, but that they felt so strongly in the organization that Rand was not doing a good job, that this is her way of kind of just cutting bait and like, okay, from here on, this is going to be, we're functional now.
Oh, yeah.
We're functional now.
We fired John Robinson. We're functional now.
And now.
We hired Rand Carthon. We're functional now. We fired Mike Vrabel. We're functional now. We promoted Chad Brinker, and we gave a new title and all this stuff to Rand Carthon. We're functional now. We hired Brian Callahan. We're functional now. Oh, okay. So we're still just, that's just what it sounds like to me.
But those other times were just mistakes, and we've learned from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And now.
And that's the key. Like, do you trust them that they actually learn? Like,
I
right
don't.
now we're on hope.
Yeah.
This is all hopeful.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I want Chad Brinker to succeed because I don't want to see another 3-14 team, but I have a hard time finding the path to sustained success.
Yeah.
And not someone getting fired next year again, then we're finding a new head coach.
And that's the bigger issue here is that the precedent seems to be bad results mean somebody's going to go. And maybe that is a standard practice in the business world. But when you're talking about a football team where chemistry is so important, people need time to draft and develop, to teach players, for players to build the sort of camaraderie. It's almost like it's its own living organism. Like the Titans are their little baby, and they've got to develop, and you've got to help them, and it takes time. You don't come out of the womb acing your algebra test. And I just don't think it's a very wise practice in general to set this standard, this expectation of, well, we were 3-14, so somebody's got to go. And now we got to figure out who is most responsible for this because, we can't let this continue. We can't give these guys time to get another cycle in and to keep getting things right. There has to be consequences, that sort of thing. And I think from the top down, it's just not a good practice when you're talking about building a football team. So while I do think, okay, the simplest way that this can have a good outcome, the optimistic take for Titans fans that are out there looking for hope, for optimism right now, I think this only makes sense, in my opinion, if that's all right. Rand Carthon wasn't doing a good job, and they really have removed him from the situation. So now, moving forward, there's clarity in the building. They're acknowledging their mistake, and we can move on and focus on football. To me, that's the only way that I move forward and one day eventually feel good about what has happened here. Because where I'm sitting right now, even knowing that may be true, there's still a part of me that goes back to like, well, you shouldn't have extended him then. That's a bad decision.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't have hired him in the first place if you didn't think he was ready for the job, kind of deal. Like, those are still bad football decisions, and I don't know, even with this change, that it's indicative of them just completely changing it up and just from now on we're only going to make good football decisions.
Yeah.
Like, there's still, no matter how you slice it, I think it still comes back on this ownership group, whoever's making the decisions, that it's not good football decisions that are being made in that building.
It's the packaging and I don't have an issue, again, I don't have an issue with Rand Carthon being fired. I really don't.
I kind of do.
I mean, I have an issue with how it went down, and I have an issue that not the other two didn't get fired with him, or at least Brian Callahan. I really don't have it. I understand. Let me put it this way. I understand why Rand Carthon would be fired.
Well, I mean, we sat on this show weeks ago and we said, when we were defending Brian Callahan,
do it, but I understand why they did it.
If it were to be one of them,
or the other,
it would be Rand.
Yeah.
But I don't think he should have been fired.
No, and I agree. I don't think he should have been.
Because if you're telling me that Rand had the final say in this, and he's responsible for the results and the state of the roster, I mean, I look at the roster and I say there's hope here. So,
he's been in the NFL. Rand Carthon's been in the NFL longer than Chad Brinker.
Has he?
Yep. He started in 2008. Chad Brinker started in 2009. He was a pro scout from 2008 to 2011. Then he was hired as director of player personnel when Snead left Atlanta to become the Rams GM. He became director of player personnel automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Became director of pro personnel with the San Francisco 49ers, then became director of player personnel with the San Francisco 49ers. So he's got a resume. It's a very good In fact, this resume is the exact thing that what is Chad Brinker has put in the job description.
That's funny.
Okay?
That's funny.
So I look at this and I go, okay, that's what they're looking for is someone like Rand Carthon. And I think Rand Carthon's biggest mistake was that he didn't play the game. And when I say he didn't play the corporate game, he went out and hired the best staff he could, which he gets no credit for, by the way. But he went out and hired Chad Brinker because he was the best person for the job.
Yeah.
And what Chad's going to do, what you come to find out, is that he's likely going to hire someone that he has a relationship with, which, as he should, which is what everybody in the NFL does.
Mm-hmm.
Rand played the game. I said it the other day. Rand played the game like a Sue or Teeny on Survivor. You won't get this reference. This is for the other people. Yeah. Sue and Teeny, while Chad played it like Genevieve and Rachel.
Okay.
And to me, that's where Rand's biggest fault was that right there.
Yeah.
Because his resume is just as long, is a little bit longer. Now, it doesn't have the different areas, but let's remember, Chad and Rand kind of knew each other because Rand Carthon called him to do trades with San Francisco and Green Bay.
Yeah.
Why would San Francisco put someone that is lazy with the power to do trades? Why would someone want someone that is lazy like Rand Carthon to go to Deebo Samuel's house to close the extension deal? Why would someone who, if Rand was lazy, would have Rand pretty much scout and run day 3 of the draft for them?
Don't know.
That's why I have a hard time coalescing all this extra negativity and stuff. It just sounds too petty to be real.
Yeah.
Because who do you all think is actually coming out and saying this stuff? It's people that didn't even want Rand in the building in the first place. I'm not saying, again, for people that may not understand context and nuance, I'm not saying that 100% Rand was an awesome GM.
Yeah.
But if you are sticking, which what the Tennessee Titans are doing, every decision on Rand Carthon, his 2024 is probably league average.
Yeah.
It did not yield the results because of injuries and the quarterback. But his 2024, his 2024 was a league average, and he did not get another year to prove otherwise.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, like you pointed out when everybody was celebrating, like, oh, they're going to tank and they're going to lose this game, and everybody's cheering, we're going to get the number 1 overall pick. And I remember you talking about, like, hey, if they lose this game, like, they might decide to get rid of somebody. And now here we are. But I circle back to our breakdown of all of the moves that he made and the ways that he helped this team. And I think if the injuries don't ravage the defense, we're talking about a different story. I think if you get, like, just league average, competent, consistent quarterback play, we're talking about a completely different story on this team. And that's why I ultimately I do think this is not a very popular thing to say right now, but I do think this team was competitive in 2024. And I think they were close at one point. If the season just gets started on a different track, the outcome of all this is completely different. And for me, I'm like, the record says 3-14, but if you actually watch the games and pay attention to what's happening, and if you watch the improvement in critical areas of the team from week 1 to week 18, I don't know how you conclude we need to head in a different direction. And I know the negligence of the right tackle position is an egregious error. The negligence of the edge rush position, I can't remember somebody brought it up today. I was listening to 104.5, I believe. And somebody said, like, they haven't spent a first-round pick on an edge rusher since
Derek Morgan.
What year was that? 2010?
Yeah, 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah, so it's been a while. Like, I get that he made mistakes. To your point, I'm not saying he's perfect, but I think if you watch the games and you see how, like, the young players were starting to contribute, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., massive hit. So you telling me Rand's got final say, so Rand's responsible for that pick. And now there's suddenly some like revisionist history on Tavondre Sweat and J.C. Latham. Like, well, they're not premium positions. Like, did they help the football team?
Right.
Jalen Harrell, James Williams, Cedric Gray, these guys are playing their asses off on special teams. Like, I don't know how we ultimately get to the point where, oh, this thing is sideways. All these new players that like, no, he needs to go. He's got to be fired.
But the thing is that is if you take them at their word that it's all Rand. But you can't.
Yeah. So it's
because they've
difficult.
made this. So like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to say that it's all Rand, okay. So if it's all Rand, now we objectively look at everything that is Rand's, right?
Yeah.
Like you just did.
And it's not that bad.
It's not bad.
It's not that bad.
But what we have heard from Brian Callahan is that it was a collaboration and a consensus.
Yeah.
So you have to bring in Chad Brinker. So if those things are as bad to get Rand fired in their eyes, and that's the reason why Rand got fired, then the other two should get fired. You get what I'm saying? Like
I absolutely.
And that's the position they put themselves in by contradicting themselves the whole way through this process constantly.
And I don't think they should have cleaned house, but I don't think they should have gotten rid of Rand either. And that's my position. They should have kept it, given these guys another year, another cycle, and give them a chance to get the quarterback right, get their guy in, and then reevaluate at the end of 2025. But it goes back to what I said earlier.
Right.
You're talking about bad football decisions being made to hold this young staff, their first year where they were together, accountable to a degree where if you don't get results right away in year one of this model, somebody's out. And that's not a good precedent to set. That's not a measure of stability. It's not, for prospective people joining the organization. I don't know how you don't feel like you're constantly looking over your shoulder. Like I heard you say, like, if I'm Brian Callahan, I'm sleeping with one eye open.
Well, hell, they basically told him, sleep with one eye open, bud.
So I just don't know. That's kind of the darkest timeline. And I got cooked, by the way, last year when all of this happened. They had the opportunity to kind of reset, clean slate, and they didn't do it. And I said, like, I'm kind of having doubts about ownership here. And I got called an idiot, imagine thinking everything that this organization has done and thinking there's a problem there. Well, look where we're at now.
I've been very critical of Amy Adams-Strunk through this whole thing. Her processes have been terrible. She's not there at the facility.
Yeah.
And what she does, she comes in and maybe sees like 3 hours of work, and then whoever talks to her the most gets the job. Because everybody's like, well, why would I put out there Mike Bergonzi, right? So Mike Bergonzi and Chad Brinker facilitated the L'Jarius Sneed trade. Those are the two guys that basically got the L'Jarius Sneed trade done. So if you hate Rand for the L'Jarius Sneed trade, you might as well go ahead and start hating Chad too.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why would Mike Bergonzi ever take this job? And I'm thinking, well, because he knows that Chad is a dope if you hate that trade, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think that trade was bad value, which I know many people do, I do not. But if you think that trade is bad value, well, then think about it from his perspective. If he thinks that trade's a bad value, well, then he knows he's got a dope ahead of him. He also knows, based on history, all he has to be is the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
And boom, I am now football czar.
Yeah.
That's why someone would take this job, is because they can easily be football czar in 2 years.
They're looking at it like, oh, hey, man, I got a lame duck coach here. And from what I've heard, Brian Callahan's not a lame duck coach. From what I've heard, they do genuinely believe in him. At least earlier this week, before there's a
because there's Chad Brinker's and Burke Nihill's words say much more.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, the prospective GM's like, oh, I just got to come in here and kind of get my feet beneath me, and then in a year I can bring in my head coach. Yeah. I can outmaneuver Chad Brinker, and then boom, I'm the top guy in this organization.
Yeah.
And that alludes to what I think is the darkest timeline out of all this. I think there is a positive world, like I outlined earlier, where You look at it and like all of this stuff is true, and the Titans removed somebody that was bad at his job, and now there's clarity moving forward. We've fixed the issue, and we're not going to have it anymore, and the Titans go on to win a bunch of football games next season. But I think the darkest timeline is we're going to be sitting in these chairs doing this all over again for somebody different next year, and then the year after that, and then the year after that, and it's just going to keep being this cycle of turnover.
Well, we're to the point you can't trust anybody.
Yeah, and it's just because the
here's what my
process
thing
is bad.
Yeah, the process is bad. The process is cloudy. It's murky. And if you totally believe that, Brinker is innocent and he's the next great white hope and all this kind of crap because you're a Tennessee Titans fan and you bleed two-tone blue, that's fine. You're gullible and naive, that's fine. I may be too cynical. And I'm not saying that Chad Brinker isn't qualified. He's qualified just as much as I thought Rand Carthon was qualified.
Yeah, I mean, before all this happened,
right?
We've had conversations about how much we like his addition and the algorithm, the injury model, all this stuff that he's talked about.
Which, by the way, the injury model kind of failed this year, so there you go.
Well,
but I look at it and
that's because Rand had final say.
Well, that's true. Rand had final say. But I look at it and I go, I find this still just so fishy.
Yeah, that's what I don't like.
And that's where it's at. It's like those people who think this is all on the up and up, to me, are just naive and gullible. And this idea that, listen, here are the words from Brinker and Nihill about Brian Callahan. And I want you to tell me if these words that they have said sound like they are 100% behind Brian Callahan, like people want to say. We believe in Brian. We think he's going to get there. Brinker said, this wasn't good enough, and Brian knows that. He understands that he and his staff have got to be better and do better. Burke Nihill said, they want to see growth, and they'll support Callahan in that growth, but they're going to hold him accountable. And then, Brinker wants the coaching staff to allow the younger players to gain valuable experience despite the growing pains resulting from the process. But the growing pains from playing second-year quarterback Will Levis last season helped lead Carthon to lose his job. Mm-hmm. This is from Teron Davenport, all in his ESPN article. That doesn't sound like a guy you 100% believe in. It sounds like a guy you believe in to, maybe be here after this year.
It sounds like he needs growth, and if he doesn't get it, we're gonna fire him.
Right, and that's fine, I guess. But
that's not,
what do you expect him to do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, the odds are stacked against Brian Callahan right now.
Yeah.
He's going to have a new GM that already is not going to be like all sold on Brian Callahan because that's not his guy.
Yeah.
He has a new power guy that obviously does not really, by his own words, not the words you heard from some scout in the building or you were fed from Chad Brinker from the PR department that, we're all 100% behind by Brian Callahan. Yeah, give me a break. You all said you were 100% behind Ryan Carthon, too, so spare me. Spare me that I'm going to think anything coming out of that building isn't utter bullshit.
Brian Callahan, if Brinker is Littlefinger, Brian Callahan needs to go get his Lord Varys.
Now, here's the thing, though.
Get in the game. Start stabbing some backs.
I get that the coach needs to get better. That's duh football 101.
Yeah.
But how are you going to expect him to get better? Because what you're going to do, guess what? You have 28 free agents expected to come through.
Yeah.
Apparently, the last GM didn't give you a good enough core, and this coaching staff didn't develop anybody. That's why they got fired, or he got fired. And on top of that, you have no fucking quarterback situation. Every quarterback option is high risk. And guess what? You know how many head coaches get to a year two with a rookie quarterback that are coaches already on the hot seat? Like zero.
Well, Zach Taylor did it, though.
Yeah, but I don't think he was ever on the hot seat.
And that's where Brian Callahan
because
came from.
Because there was real patience over there, though.
Yeah, that would be
There's
that would
no
be
real
nice.
patience here.
No.
I mean, Mike Brown has proved to be a cheap owner, but at least he's patient.
Yeah.
He's not. Amy Adams Strunk's not patient. And then on the other side, you look at it like this. There have only been 2 head coaches in like 20 years that have drafted the number 1 overall pick and kept their jobs the following year.
Yeah.
The odds are stacked against them.
I know.
They have no
That's
edge rushers, no right tackle situation. Listen, they can fix some of these holes, but they got all these other holes, and supposedly they got to be selective. So does that mean they're not going to spend a lot of money, even though they have the 10th most cap? It's kind of ironic that the year that we have this explosion of free agent signings was when the team president also presided over the salary cap, and he's the same team president that's also presiding over the salary cap this year. But
the worst part of all this, trying to reconcile all of this, is that it just kind of feels like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in this. You can tell me. It just kind of feels like 2024 was just kind of wasted. It's just like a tread water kind of season. Like, what did any of this mean if we're not on stable footing right now?
Because what do we say? This whole season is about finding out what Will Levis is. You find out what Will Levis is, and then you fire a guy who may or may not have even liked him.
Yeah.
Because we don't even know if he even liked Will Levis at this point.
Yeah, man. It's just, I don't know. I have questions about, like, from the top down, what is the decision-making process on football moves? Are these expectations communicated to these guys? Like, do they know, hey, you better win 9 football games or else it's gone?
That's what it feels like. And then you really can't trust them. They could change their mind. Well, you won 9 games, but you didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. A lot of the language is very patience-coded. You're saying draft and develop. We've got to work at this. It's going to take a while to implement this system and all that. But, like, what about working for the Tennessee Titans makes you think that you're going to get patience? Like,
Brian Callahan's got no patience.
Yeah.
He's going to have no patience lended to him.
It just makes me sad, man.
It makes me sad for him.
It makes me sad.
Whatever the results may be in 2025, Brian Callahan will always have the utmost respect from me for going through the hell that he has gone through these first 2 years.
Yeah, he's a real
2024
one.
And 2025. This is going to be hell.
He's a real one, man.
Hell is on the horizon, people.
I don't get the people that say he's in over his head. He sounds to me in his pressers like a guy that comes across as extremely self-aware, understanding the situation.
I'm sure he's
transparent.
knows.
He's transparent, understanding the issues, communicating those things, and I think he's a good football coach. And I know, like I said, that's not a popular thing to say right now, but I kind of hate it because in my mind, I'm thinking if you get this roster to a good enough spot, which I felt they were on the track for doing in a couple years' time, like, I think we could be really – I think we could really be cooking here.
So –
but we're just going to blow it up every year.
They're just going to blow it up every year. Because I think he does probably – I think he does probably get fired in the middle of the season last year at some point. I don't know. Hey, listen, again, this can all lead to a good result eventually.
It can, yeah.
But again, how long will that good result sustain?
Yeah.
Because when you have people in power in leadership positions like they have, and I'm not even including Chad Brinker in this, when you have the ownership structure that they have up there, more often than not, those do not lead to sustained success. That leads to Browns kind of success, right? Or Jaguars kind of say, oh, we're good for a couple of years, and we're back down in the shitter. We're good for a couple of years, and then we're back down. And you have nothing to show for it. If you want to build sustained success, you got to have some form of stability and patience.
Yeah.
And they have exhibited 0% of that.
Time after time, year after year, there's all of these examples of patience benefiting a franchise. We're not even talking like Buffalo, Kansas City, but even like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're always kind of in the middle of the pack, but they have that level of consistency, that stability that you can really you get to a point where you just kind of plug and play with guys. You just kind of fill holes every offseason, and then you're back at it, and you're competitive. And it's a smart way. Like for years, it felt like everybody's trying to pursue, the Shanahan-McVay model, the 49ers, the Rams. But, like, look at the Packers, look at the Steelers, look at some teams like that, the Baltimore Ravens. Like, those are all stable situations that clearly exhibit patience. And there's a canyon between those kind of teams and where the Titans are at right now, and the Browns and the Raiders and the Jags and that sort of thing. So I don't know if you saw Ed Henry's comment in the chat, but this is fantastic for Game of Thrones fans. Remember, Colt Anderson is Bran. He got thrown out the window, but a few seasons later, everyone was bending the knee. This whole thing ends with Colt Anderson, head coach of the Tennessee Titans.
There you go. It's going to happen. Hey, listen, he had the only unit that improved over the course of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, Colt Anderson for head coach. You know, I look at it and I go, everybody's like, oh, the offense got worse. Well, yeah, the quarterback sucked. I mean, we're talking about Will Levis put up the worst QBR, which is a EPA, not passer rating.
I was
It
going to
is
say
EPA, QBR.
Yeah.
The worst QBR game of the season.
Mm-hmm. Was it like a 1.2?
It was a 1.2. He ended up being like a 29 QBR passer. Let's look it up real quick.
Well, I know at one point during the season they had to expand the graph because they had this cluster of guys like right here, and Will Levis was like way on the outside.
He ended as 27.6 in total QBR.
Oh, man.
27.6.
Wait, so that's his total QBR.
That's his total QBR.
He's 27th.
Yeah, no, he was 32nd.
Man. Yeah, see, that's bad. And
that is quarterback specific. That adjusts for pass catchers, offensive line, situation, garbage time, 27.6.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is you posted the chart. I don't remember what exactly it was measuring, but when we kind of been on this Derek Carr kick for a little bit, right? And you posted this chart that shows like Derek Carr among the leaders in a certain metric, and Will Levis way at the bottom. And then Mason Rudolph is just above Will Levis.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we came on this show and we're like, yeah, Mason Rudolph makes the whole thing go, but he's still not like a real difference maker at the position. And that's where the harrowing realization happens, where it's like, oh my God, they are bad at quarterback. And it's something that they have to stabilize.
So Derek Carr, speaking of which, 63.1 QBR. Just for the record, 63.1 QBR. 27.2?
Yeah.
63.1, 27.2. 63.1 puts you at 13th in the NFL on the season.
Okay.
So, listen, this team can make great strides if it finds a better quarterback.
That's what I'm saying.
But the idea that Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon are at fault for Will Levis being a total cluster, to my mind, and not include Chad Brinker in that, in my mind, is silly.
Yeah.
It's silly.
I think so too.
Okay. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about who they're interviewing. Just real quick. We already talked about Mike Bergonzi. Remember, they are looking for someone that has been a career as a scout, top flight, top level evaluator, major hand in setting the draft board, consistent winning organization, fingerprints all over the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So Chiefs assistant GM Mike Bergonzi. So when John Dorsey was GM of the Chiefs with Andy Reid, there's a thing in there where like it's John Dorsey, Chris Ballard, Brett Veach, and Mike Bergonzi are all in the room, and Andy Reid told somebody, all four of these guys will be GMs later. Okay. John Dorsey obviously was already a GM. And then you got Chris Ballard was a GM.
Yep.
Or is a GM. And then you have, obviously, Brett Veach is GM.
Yep.
Mike Bergonzi looks to be the next guy. So it looks like Andy Reid was pretty right.
He's a pretty smart guy, that Andy Reid.
He is. He's various scouting and personnel roles from 2009 to 2020 with the Chiefs. Assistant GM since 2021. He directs the clubs, college, and pro scouting departments. And remember, 8 rookies played in their Super Bowl victory versus the Eagles.
Yeah, man.
8 rookies.
Yeah, man.
So, you know, he has a background working in the New England system because Scott Pioli came over from New England to the Chiefs. Everybody kind of maybe forgets that. And basically, he's helped build that player development machine down there. He facilitated the Snead trade with Brinker. He's helped build this via a draft and develop model that you have to have over at the Chiefs.
Yeah.
He also is quoted, this is from Brett Veach. No, this may be Andy Reid, I think. Along with winning comes continuity, and I think that staff as a whole has a very strong understanding of what works there. I think Veach and assistant general manager Mike Berganzi are good evaluators to have an eye for talent along with an understanding of what plays in the league. But there's 3 GM openings. He has his pick.
Yeah.
And it's the Raiders, where Tom Brady is going to be at. It's the Jets, where who knows what's going on up there. And then the Titans.
Yeah.
I think I'd be going Raiders over both those other jobs, maybe.
Yeah, and especially, given presumably he's going to be able to go get his head coach. Just lockstep. Getting guys on the same page, the same timeline. What a concept.
There you go. Then you got Bills Director of Player Personnel Terrence Gray. Prior to the Bills, he spent 11 seasons as a college scout for the Vikings. 11 seasons. Came in with Bean and McDermott as Director of College Scouting in 2017. So 11 seasons with the Vikings in 2017, still scouting.
Yeah.
Interviewed with the Raiders and Chargers last year and has been recommended to teams coming out of the Accelerator program. Cut his teeth on the college scouting side, like I said. Worked on the pro side with the cap and actually through the CBA issues back in the day when the CBA was going through. The Bills have made him a more forward-facing member of the front office. Easton Freeze actually has a video. Not really much you can glean from it. I watched it, and I was like, well, this is kind of a pointless video, except for the cool Sopranos kind of start to it with the cars.
Yeah. I like early morning driving, too.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
But you can go watch that video over at Easton Freeze's account. So, I like Terrence Gray's resume.
I do, too.
He fits everything he wants, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Scout, high-level talent.
And that's like, I feel like that's one of the organizations that people don't talk about enough is like what they're doing in Buffalo. They've got a really good scouting machine going there because they've got a lot of players that they draft and develop.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, to me, that is one of the models that I look at and I'm like, hey, we need to kind of poke around what's going on in Buffalo a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Browns assistant GM Catherine Hickman. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey. She's not really a scout.
Mm-hmm.
She's been kind of around the scouting departments and stuff, but she's not really a scout. She doesn't come from a winning organization.
Yeah.
Because the Browns suck.
Yeah. Well,
they've been 21-30 since she's been there.
Yeah.
If you got to say if it's a winning organization, it's got to be a winning organization.
That's true. If you're going to say that.
Yeah. 3 years as coordinator of football administration for the Montreal Alouettes, 1 year as their assistant general manager, 2 years as director of football admin for the Toronto Argonauts, 1 year spent in the front office with the Tampa Bay Vipers, 3 years as a football ops coordinator with the Eagles, and then 2 years as VP of football ops. So Eagles, good.
Yeah.
3 years with Browns as assistant GM. Intriguing resume. Hickman's big picture approach to marrying the operations side with the scouting side has definitely been an asset for Cleveland, and other teams will probably like her experience there working with ownership too. So she can get in the ear and work with the owner. If I'm Chad Brinker, be watching my back.
Yep, she's the football czar.
Yeah, Eagles, her job at the Eagles, because there's not a lot on Catherine out there, but her job at the Eagles was football operations and player personnel, including pro and college scouting, contract management, player staff development, and football research. She got her start, and she's like 39, I think now. Started out as a corporate tax lawyer in Canada. She's Canadian, so take whatever you guys feel about Canadians, just keep that in mind. And her number one key is well-rounded. This is what she told Tom Pelissero at the Accelerator program. Her number one key to being a successful executive. Well-rounded skill sets, good decision maker in multiple verticals, and to gather diverse opinions and make the best decisions.
Can you hear me? I just
Yes.
lost audio.
No, I can hear you.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did your battery pack die?
I don't know.
There you go. But you can hear me, right?
I can hear. Well,
Okay.
I can hear you as like I would if we were.
So what do you think about that? I think she's a long shot if she even accepts the interview, but I do feel like she's a long shot because she doesn't really fit what he said he wanted.
Well, it's the scouting aspect of it for me. It's like if you're not in the streets, so to speak, if you're not in the trenches getting the scouting going on, it doesn't sound like your experience is going to be very valuable to what this regime's looking for. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, so remember, nobody
once.
has accepted an interview. So they have been all been requested, unless some news has broke while we've been in here.
Yeah.
Nobody has accepted an interview invitation.
The only news that's been broken from where I sit is that Abdul Carter is raising hell on Notre Dame.
Good. I wish we were watching that game. We should have that playing right there.
Man, yeah.
What's the point of this TV, Jax, if we don't have the game on?
Trust me, you don't want me touching that shit.
That's true. Okay, Colts assistant GM Ed Dodds. Now, the other day I made fun of Ed Dodds because,
Ballard's right-hand man.
But you really start diving in and you're like, bro.
Well, I like
Dodds is a football guy.
If he was one of the architects of that Legion of Boom era Seahawks team, that's the guy, right? He has experience in Seattle.
Yeah. So
that was some. I mean, you go back to like early 2010s.
Well, that's
Seahawks
also when
rosters.
you got Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean that's some roster building right there. Those Seahawks teams were good, fun to watch.
8 years as a scout for Seattle, 2 years as senior personnel executive at Seattle, 1 year vice president of player personnel with the Colts, and 7 years as assistant GM with the Colts. He manages and directs the scouts. Dodds has long been one of the NFL's most respected evaluators as an integral part of the Seahawks Legion of Boom build.
Yeah.
And Indy GM Chris Ballard's right-hand man over the last 7 years. He was finalist for the Panthers job last year, but he backed out and also interviewed for openings with the Chargers and Raiders. It is said that the reason that he backed out is because he just kind of knows when he gets in there whether it's going to be a good fit or not because he wants to implement his shit.
Oh, man.
So may eliminate him from here.
Yeah.
He's a big-time cusser. I think he would suffer no fools from our local media. You'd have to come correct. You would have to come correct with your questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask dumb questions. So he directs the scouting department and has remade the Colts' entire player valuation, which the process that himself took 2 years to write and put in place and perfect in Indianapolis. Teams that are looking to put a scout into the GM chair will be attracted to this football lifer. Hates complacency, talks about relentlessness. Front office Swiss Army knife is what he's been called, a scout at heart. Kenny Moore and Danico Autry are two of his big free agent acquisitions that he himself has been a part of. His words that he lives by 2 words that he learned, from Pete Carroll, always compete. He's unbelievable when it comes to communicating with coaches and seeing the fit of a player, being able to watch the tape and know that guy is going to fit. Ed is a huge asset to us. That's from Chad Brinker, or not Chad Brinker, Chris Ballard. His staff rips off 17 straight 12-hour workdays in February. 15 more days like that heading into the draft in April, from May to April, or March to April. In 2022, though, that was from 2019. In 2022, they only got 4 days off from mid-December through draft weekend. 136 out of 140 days were spent on the draft. Here's the interesting part. His grading scale stems from GM Ron Wolf, where he ranks players 1 through 9. Ron Wolf has been quoted by Chad Brinker because Ron Wolf used to be at the Packers. Chad Brinker and Ron Wolf kind of mentor-mentee. There you go.
Boom. Here's my question, though. The question I would have if I were interviewing, maybe they can let me sit in the interview room if he accepts it. Why, if you were one of the architects of one of the greatest secondaries in NFL history, how come you couldn't get it right for the Indianapolis Colts in the last several years?
That's true. Quarterback again up there. I would love to know
No,
his
I think their
evaluation on
secondary was
Anthony.
bad, though.
Yeah, I would love to know his evaluation
That's a
on
good
Anthony
question, though.
Richardson.
Yeah, because they're having similar conversations up there as we are here about the quarterback position.
And he's a big-time Mobile guy. So one of the articles I read was he was down at Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and they said that he was at some bar. Oh, you know he was at Winsel's. And they were watching the game.
That's the football guy's bar down there.
So they were watching the game. The Colts were in the wild card game or something, and they won.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the fuck are you? And he literally said, what the fuck? What the fuck are you guys cheering for? We ain't won shit. None of this matters until you win a Super Bowl. So let's get back to scouting. Like, he's a football guy. Reggie McKenzie's also interviewing. Most people know Reggie McKenzie.
See, that's kind of like, for me, that's the pick if you are looking for somebody
the
to
lame
just,
duck guy.
Yeah, to just kind of come in and be your.
But he's not going out on the road. Is he really a grinder still?
I don't know.
I mean, he may wake up and love football all day and think about football all day, but he's doing it from his couch.
I just think about this as like it's going to be so funny the way this week has gone when they like actually get a good GM, a qualified GM candidate in here, and then Brinker gets the axe next season.
I don't think it could happen. That's why I don't think he would hire Thomas Dimitroff. Who, by the way, Thomas Dimitroff, everybody's all in love with Thomas Dimitroff.
His last couple drafts.
From 2017 to 2020, only one Pro Bowler selected.
Yeah.
0 All-Pros.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that crazy to think about? That's worse than the Tennessee Titans John Robinson run.
I was about to say, that is like the J-Rob fall-off.
Yeah. He had a J-Rob fall-off, and he had a 4-12 team. Remember all those bad contracts he signed and everything that really hampered him? And then they had to come around with Terry Fortnott and Arthur Smith, and they went from a 4-12 team automatically to a 7-9 team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Thomas Dimitroff, maybe he's learned something from being out of the league for 4 years, but there's a reason why he's been out of the league for 4 years.
Or maybe it's also like, hey, this might be the only crack I have at getting back into like an executive type of circle.
Yeah, to me, I look at it and I go, okay, Marlon Davidson. You remember Marlon Davidson being on the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he was a 2020 pick from there. Tack McKinley.
Oh, man, all time.
Yeah.
All time.
Go back and look at those draft classes. They're not good. Yeah. And he could not build a defense to save his life.
No, man.
So I'm out on Thomas Dimitroff. I think people that are into Thomas Dimitroff,
it's a name.
It's a name. That's it. And that's really it. And they're they're forgetting all the bad after the 2017 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Where they caught lightning in a bottle with Kyle Shanahan. Guess what? You don't have fucking Kyle Shanahan coming through that door.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John Spytek, Buccaneers assistant GM. Bucs are the one of 4 franchises in the cap era to win 4 straight division titles following a Super Bowl title.
They've had some really good drafts.
Really
good drafts the last few years.
I've listened. There's a video on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers official team website where he goes through for like 28 minutes talking about the draft, up at the podium answering questions. That dude is a communicator.
Yeah.
If you are anti-Rand Carthon, like Rand Carthon pressers, you're going to love John Spytek pressers.
He's the guy. He's the guy.
And so along the Bucs are one of the 4 franchises. So along the way, Jason Light, Spytek, and Greenberg, who's another member, and a deep staff have reset the cap, during that time, turned one of the oldest rosters of the league into one of the youngest without falling off, and with multiple head coaches and quarterbacks at the helm. Has over 21 years in the NFL in scouting or in charge of scouting. Some of his things that he is responsible for is the NFL draft, free agency, and other personnel decisions, as well as overseeing the day-to-day operations for Tampa's college and pro scouting departments. Great communicator.
Mm-hmm.
That guy seems like you'd be a shoe-in. Today it was
qualified.
Ian Cunningham, you can go to stackingtheinbox.com, search up Ian Cunningham. You can see everything about Ian Cunningham. He comes from the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Bears. He was interviewed. He was a finalist for the job when Rand Carthon was there. I loved Ian Cunningham, Rand Carthon as my top 2 choices. So it'd be pretty neat to see Ian Cunningham to get back in here.
If those were your top 2 and the Titans got them both?
There you go. I'd look like a genius. Maybe I should just be hiring people. Seahawks Senior Director of Player Personnel Matt Berry was said today, so this is the last person that we'll cover. 16 years predominantly in scouting from 2008 to 2015. Then in 2015, all with the Seahawks. Then in 2015, promoted to Director of National Scouting. Then in 2023, promoted to the Senior Director of Player Personnel with the Seahawks. You know, Seattle's quietly rebuilt the roster over the last couple of years with the picks that came back in the Russell Wilson trade. Have been in contention of each of its 3 post-Wilson years, with the final one being a post-Carroll year 2. Barry had long been seen as one of GM John Schneider's secret weapons as a road scout, and then was promoted from college scouting director to his current role, which has given him the in-office experience he needed. That's given those around Barry a look at the organized, detailed approach he took in college scouting. So, big-time college scout again. All the college scouts.
Grinders.
Out of those right there, which one interests you the most?
Man, I don't remember any of their names, first and foremost, so that's great podcasting on my part. I came into the
Just
studio.
say the team that they said.
I came into the studio tonight thinking I would really want the resume of Borgonzi from the Chiefs, the Chiefs organization. But I really like the guys from the Bills and the Bucks too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I still like Ed Dodds. I know that some people think that he's
I
poop.
love like 12 hours a day watching film, buddy. Sign me up. Like if you need,
and he's
you
able
need
to
some
get
assistance?
scouts that love to do that too.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. If you need assistance, there you go. Right here,
Right
Stoney
here.
Keeley.
Right here.
And I know that there are some media people that call him poop, apparently, but I don't think they've really done as much research as needed to come to that. But it would be interesting to see if Ed Dodds even wants to come here. That, to me, let's see who accepts the positions, right? Because we know that interviews are being scheduled or at least open to being scheduled now. And we know that tomorrow, this is our next topic, we're just real quick. We know tomorrow is probably Black Friday for the coaching staff. Friday news dump on the way.
Yeah.
But we know the schedules are coming up, but we still have not heard of one actual accepted scheduled interview.
Yeah, that's it's pretty wild.
I wonder if they were waiting for the ruling from the NFL to get these things scheduled.
I would think so. That's part of it. And there's also been that the nugget out there about the weather. We are supposed to get inclement
But I mean,
weather.
you can still schedule. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't, just because you schedule doesn't mean it has to happen right when you schedule. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, man. I scheduled an appointment to take my cat to the vet on Tuesday, and I'm already like, oh, I don't know about that. Maybe I shouldn't have scheduled it. I should have waited to see. I don't like driving to begin with, much less in the snow.
I look at it and I think I would be good with Ed Dodds or Spy Tech or the Chiefs, Mike Bergonzi or Terrence Gray.
Yeah.
You could talk me into Matt Berry, but I'm just not sure on that he's done enough.
I don't know, and I think it's probably because the Bucks, like outside of the Brady Super Bowl run, I don't think people realize how good their roster construction has been. Like they've just kind of been average. I mean, they had that playoff upset last year and went a little further than people thought. I think they could beat Washington this weekend. But I don't think people realize how good of a job they've done drafting and supplementing the roster with their free agent additions. But they got a pretty good thing going down there. So like coming from that organization, I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched enough Tampa Bay film this year to really diagnose the X's and O's of what's wrong with the team, why they're not more successful. But I think on the surface, just from a roster building standpoint, they've done a really good job that enough people aren't talking about.
So tomorrow's Black Friday for the coaches. I just feel that it's been way too long. So that means another news cycle of bad news regarding the Tennessee Titans.
They don't want, with like Rand Carthon, Mike Keith, who we haven't even talked about this week. They don't want to put it out there. We're firing more people.
I think they're going to put it out there tomorrow. If Colt Anderson survives, will that overshadow the Rand Carthon firing as being the worst move that they've made this offseason?
People will have their pitchforks. They're going to be like, you mean to tell me?
I've been trying to warn people. I don't think Colt Anderson's going to get fired.
Can I say
that's not sourced or anything? It's just a feeling I got.
Am I allowed to say this?
Yeah.
People are going to show up at my house with a pitchfork. I don't think Colt Anderson should be fired.
I agree.
I think special team. Look, they churned, which I don't know what more you can ask a coaching staff to do. They churned. They got Justin Hardy in there. They got Kendall Brooks in there. These young bucks started playing well. There's a clip on my Twitter of Jalen Harrell hauling ass down the field to make a tackle on special teams. Cedric Great. James Williams has developed into a nice special team player. And
but the guy who drafted him, he doesn't know football. or maybe all three of them don't know football. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Whatever this narrative is.
Maybe the common denominator here, Zach, what we haven't even addressed the possibility is that I just don't know shit about football. And maybe I'm just completely misevaluating everything that I say. But I think special teams got better, and I think Colt probably, again, not sourced information, but just I think from a PR aspect, we got to think about this coaching staff as young, and I feel like he said some things in press conferences that people held against him for a long time. I think he wisened up to that a little bit. We haven't had a head-scratching quote from him in a while. His unit's playing better. I don't know why you fire a guy that's doing better.
Yeah, and I look at it like this. He kept telling people that he was coaching the right stuff. The players weren't executing. You see it on the field.
Yeah.
You can see and point to, I did it almost every week this season that there was a bad play, showed where the individual player, one individual screwed up the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there is no doubt that he was coaching and preparing them. It's just that either they weren't being vocal about what they understood, or they in the game they lacked the proper football instincts that you need.
Yeah, man.
Let me tell you something. And I'm going to ask you this too, because this is like, what's your one big thing you learned from this football season? Philosophy-wise, draft-wise, anything you want to say. So I'm going to tell you mine. Players over plays.
Yeah.
That is the big thing I've learned all year, and it's something that has echoed in my head after reading a book about Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Raheem Morris, all those guys, Mike McDaniel. Players over plays. And there should not be an exception to that here in this team. And even though the people want to protect and coddle, oh, my sweet little Luke Gifford or my sweet Jack Gibbons or my sweet little Will Levis, at the end of the day, it's up to the players to execute.
Yeah.
And if they don't execute, and that's what that's why after 2015, Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan met up somewhere out in L.A. with, I think Dimitroff was there too, and Dan Quinn. They all met up there, and they hashed it out, and Matt Ryan just finally got Kyle Shanahan to understand it's players over plays.
Yeah.
You can call a play, that's fine, but it's got to be something that we can all execute.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't execute it, that's on me.
Yeah.
And Kyle Shanahan's like, okay, I'm going to put the ball's in your court. And it worked. They went to the Super Bowl that year. They got Kyle Shanahan the San Francisco job where he's carried it all the way through his whole philosophy. Players over plays is the big thing I've learned.
And you're saying, just to be clear, that the Titans don't have a Matt Ryan, a 2016
No, they do not have a 2016 Matt Ryan.
So when you first posed the question, my immediate reaction was something that's been just kind of, I don't want to say revelatory to me, because you've heard the cliche from respected ball knowers, like coaching can only get you so far. And I think the more you learn about the game, you kind of realize how imperative execution is to the overall product on the field. And so what I was going to say was that execution can undo even the best of coaching. And so when you don't have good execution, and it's not just like receivers running the wrong routes, quarterbacks making the wrong throws, but like the penalties too, like those are on the players as well. And that was a massive issue that plagued this franchise in 2024. So I was going to say that poor execution can undo even the best of coaching, but we're essentially saying the same thing there. So just for the sake of being different, I think, what did you learn about the Tennessee Titans in 2024?
Or just football in general.
Oh, okay.
Like, even if it's a draft philosophy that you came across, you're like, oh, man, this makes so much sense now. Anything.
I think I did not fully understand how I learned how truly devastating poor quarterback play can be to a team. Because, I'm like a lot of people in the chat have brought this up. It's like, well, it's on Brian Callahan to coach him up. But I think watching the way this team performed this year, like, I feel like there's only so much Brian Callahan can do.
Look at Trey Lance.
Kyle
Lance. Shanahan, everybody calls the guy.
Yeah.
And he openly admits he made a mistake drafting Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he drafted Trey Lance, couldn't get anything out of him, but nobody cares because there was a Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
The problem here, there was no Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad Brinker has gone on record and said a couple of things about quarterbacks that should be on your radar if you're a Titans fan. If you have the quarterback, you have a chance. Ron Wolf, Ed Dodd's bud, Ron Wolf used to say, this in Green Bay. I've heard it. It's been ingrained in me from day one. If you don't have a quarterback, a high-level one, forget about it. Don't make any plans that you're going to the Super Bowl anytime soon. It's best to draft one when you don't need one.
Yep.
Yeah, good luck on that. You're not getting that luxury right now. I was taught for years in Green Bay is every 2 to 3 years you need to be drafting quarterbacks and developing them.
Yeah.
Something this Tennessee Titans team hasn't done because they held too long to Ryan Tannehill. But that's the thing is like nobody really bags Kyle Shanahan. They bag the trade up and drafting Trey Lance, but they don't really bag Kyle Shanahan for not being able to develop Trey Lance. Because you know what? He fucking abandoned the project and went to a new one.
Yeah. Well, he developed Brock Purdy.
You go back and read, I tell you, The Why is Everything is a great book.
I forgot.
It's a great book, and it details all about Kirk Cousins and RG3 and all that kind of stuff. Kyle Shanahan can only work with certain quarterbacks. He is not a universal plug-and-play quarterback guru that everybody makes him out to be, and he will openly admit it. Because if he didn't want they didn't want RG3, and RG3 couldn't play in the system that they wanted to run, and then he ended up getting hurt. He ended up stinking anyway, no matter what system you put him in. That's why they were so in love with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So just put a bow on that. Speaking of player evaluation and everything, we'll be down at the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I'm bummed we don't get to watch Shador.
Yeah. 6 p.m. every night from Monday through Friday while we're at the Senior Bowl, you will get an episode of Football and Other F Words live. Mm-hmm. We will tell you what we saw from the day, what we'll preview for the next day, and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. One of the most comprehensive Senior Bowl coverages you'll ever be able to get has always been our show.
Yeah.
You'll also be doing Hot Read 2 times that week, correct?
Yep.
And we'll also put out our social clips that we usually do, but we'll also have stuff at stackinginbox.com.
There's already stuff at stackinginbox.com.
There is. And we'll also put up video clips, maybe a couple of interviews and stuff like that, stuff for the 104.5 Zone YouTube channel as well. So if you're ready for some Senior Bowl coverage and ready for draft talk, I am too. I'm exhausted with all this other talk.
I am too, man. I'm super ready to just be done with all of this and just talk draft. And that's what, I haven't watched a lot of draft tape this week, which is unusual for me at this point in the week. I've probably watched at least, a handful of games. And I'm just like, let's put this behind us and let's start heading to Mobile. The draft starts in Mobile.
All right. We've been on here for too long. We've been on here for 93 minutes.
Well, wait a second.
Okay.
We got to preview the Hula Bowl.
Okay, you get 5 minutes for Hula Bowl.
I'm kidding. Apparently, the quarterback from Cornell is having a pretty good week, though, and we saw a clip of.
Is he your Jason Bean this year?
Well, I don't know because I haven't gotten my hands on any Cornell tape yet, so we'll see. But there's a defensive lineman from Rutgers down there.
Yeah,
that's making some noise. Also, just two bits of information: the semi-annual sales going on at Yankee Candle. Sorry, no free advertising.
Yeah.
75% off. I have bought 10 large jars in the last couple of weeks, but go out there and happy birthday, John Ajuku.
There you go. Is it really his birthday?
Yeah.
There you
Titans tweeted it earlier today.
Who?
all this chaos, and then it's just
John
happy
Ajuku.
birthday, John Ajuku.
With his hairline and everything. Just real quick. Also, January 20th, Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. What better way than to listen to two white guys talk about football?
Yeah.
Because Stoney is going to be joining me for the full 2 hours on Cover 2 that Monday.
Yeah.
He's going to be filling in for Blaine. We'll do a little Senior Bowl talk and preview there. Next week, we're going to talk about this quarterback class and why we feel, me and you, I think we do, at least how I feel, how the last year's quarterback class has totally unfairly skewed the draft perception of this draft class.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about that because I don't think this draft class is 2022 like everybody wants to lazily say. I think it's more 2015, 2016 than anything else. But we're going to talk about that next week. Next week. Because we got to go.
We do. I didn't realize we need a clock in here.
We need a clock in here.
Because I'll sit here and talk until they turn the lights off in this place.
Stoney Keeley at Stoney Keeley, SoBrosNetwork.com. Then, of course, StackingTheInbox.com. Hot Read podcast twice a week as well on the 440 Sports Network. I'm Zach Lyons. You can listen to Cover 2, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time every weekday here on 104.5 The Zone. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.